I want to start by saying that X-Men 97 was an experience. As someone who grew up with the X-Men Evolution series, I can truly say that I missed the overall X-Men vibe. The philosophical ideology, the action, the aura farming.
To me, my niggas.
But this iteration was different, and this time I was watching it as an adult. I was always aware that X-Men was kind of an allegory for civil rights, or at the very least a metaphor for the oppression of minority groups. But as a kid, I didn't really have a stance on that portion of X-Men. I didn't see it as a social commentary. For me, there was just a clear good guy in Charles Xavier and the X-Men, and a clear bad guy in Magneto and the Brotherhood. And I want to talk about that. Magneto absolutely steals the show in X-Men 97. This series portrays an older, wiser Magneto and shows us what he'd be like without opposition. When the clashing ideologies of Professor X and Magneto are put to rest, what does he do? He actually becomes a great leader. One with enough humility to mediate when needed, the courage to take accountability for his past transgressions, the intelligence to delegate tasks that aren't his strengths, the patience to try to do things differently, and the fortitude to face every challenge head-on, even if that meant making the ultimate sacrifice. This version of Magneto is a man in every sense of the word. And his actions in this series, combined with my adult reasoning capabilities, made me realize that Magneto was, is, and always will be right. There's the age-old comparison between Martin Luther King Jr. and Professor Charles Xavier, and Magneto and Malcolm X. However, there is some nuance that separates the civil rights activists from their mutant counterparts. Martin Luther King Jr.'s whole thing was non-violent confrontation, with the intention of integration. The idea was to force the system to show its teeth and ultimately let it paint itself in an unfavorable light. And that occasionally meant putting yourself in harm's way on purpose. If we're gonna oversimplify it, we'll say that he was hoping to appeal to people's humanity and to shame the system and those behind it into changing. The end goal was black and white people living together as equals, with law and culture reshaped to make that possible. Professor X essentially has that same goal and vision. His dream is peaceful, human-mutant coexistence. He believes that most humans can be persuaded and that the moral example will win in the long game. The big difference is that MLK was dealing with a real state that could be shamed, pressured, legislated against. Professor X is dealing with the world that keeps building genocide robots and mutant cures, which is the crux of the issue. For all intents and purposes, people of color are no different than white people. Mutants, however, are. Having an integrated society doesn't work very well when mutants desperately need their own infrastructure. Mutant hospitals, mutant schools that teach ability training, but also power ethics and philosophy, mutant-specific laws, mutant law enforcement. The list goes on, which is why Magneto is right, at least to a degree. Mutants are fundamentally different and do require their own society, like Krakoa. And the idea that humans shouldn't interfere with the affairs of mutants is probably true, also to a degree. The X-Men universe keeps proving Magneto right on a loop. Every time the mutants try to play the nice guy or trust human systems, it ends in something horrific. Genosha is the clearest example of that. Mutants finally get a recognized nation and a shot at building their own society, and it gets turned into ash in an afternoon. To be fair, I'm not pretending that Magneto is some flawless revolutionary saint. There are plenty of moments where he's absolutely done the wrong thing. He's reckless with civilian lives, he writes off human allies way too quickly, and sometimes his trauma turns into this blanket all humans are the enemy kind of thing. But even at his worst, he's usually misguided about the method, but not wrong about the threat. Even though Magneto occasionally overacts, he does actually understand how bad the situation is. Meanwhile, Professor X consistently undercorrects. He keeps acting like heartfelt speeches and moral example will fix the system that is literally building new flavors of mutant genocide every decade. So if the choice is between a guy who sees the danger clearly and sometimes goes too far, and a guy who refuses to admit how bad it really is, I'm sorry, I'm going with the guy who at least knows what game we're playing. So when I say Magneto was always right, I don't mean that every stadium drop or terrorist stunt was the correct tactical decision. What I mean is that his core instinct is correct. If you are the hated minority with the target on your back, survival demands a bit more than hope and optimism. You need your own infrastructure, your own laws, your own territory, and leaders whose first priority is you and your people, not how morally comfortable the majority feels about you. Professor X wants a world where humans eventually accept mutants as like a kind of quirky neighbor. Magneto accepts that the world is likely to accept a far-off country that has mutants rather than build a genuinely beloved community. With that said, X-Men 97 was a truly great show that did almost all of the cast some justice. There are some insanely great moments in this season. What stands out to me most in this moment is Nightcrawler's eulogy for Gambit. I thought that was really well worded, great stuff. There's some pretty good moments from Rogue. Cyclops is refreshingly powerful in comparison to his live-action counterpart, and the overall plotline included some great villains. The general storyline was very interesting and clearly meant for an adult audience. The storytelling was great, and they really managed to capture the vibe of previous X-Men animated series while doing something refreshingly new. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it, and if you have, tell me what you thought. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that cool stuff. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you next time.